Today I'm talking about 3 foreign films, and their titles are One Cut of the Dead, The Good, the Bad, the Weird, and Tu Mama Tambien. The first up is One Cut of the Dead. This is a 2018 Japanese movie, and it is amazing. I love this movie so much. I knew it was going to be good going into it, but I was so blown away by it. I laughed so much. This movie is it's amazing. I'm gonna be very limited with what I say about the premise of this movie because I strongly feel that it is a lot more fun if you know next to nothing about this movie. But I will say it is a zombie film that is one continuous shot, one unbroken shot. And they legit did it. It was actually one continuous shot, and it's great. It's so good. The first act is kind of rough. You can kind of see the edges, so to speak. And then as you transition into the second act, you get kind of confused and just especially me, I was very confused. Then you piece together what's actually happening and it makes a lot of sense. But then going into the third act, it all comes together masterfully. I don't think I've laughed that hard in such a long time. And honestly, I think too that it pays off for noticing little things. It's hilarious. It's so good. It's so solid. Yeah, it's just great. I blanket recommend it. It's a really, really good film. If you're not really a fan of horror and stuff like that, you don't need to worry. It's so good. I love this movie so much. It's one of those movies where the third act instantly made the first act better. So I kind of wanted to go back and rewatch the first act because it's so good. I love this movie. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Next up is The Good, the Bad, the Weird. This is a Korean movie. It is a remake of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, except, set in Asia. I have seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly before. It has been a while, but I do know it fairly well. And as far as remakes go, this movie's pretty dang great. Obviously, it can't match the levels of the original, but it also is trying to do something differently. This is definitely a comedy, whereas the original was not even kind of a comedy. And it works really, really well. They actually do action incredibly well. That was definitely something that stood out to me a lot, especially the last big action set piece was incredible because I was honestly, through no fault of the movie, I got kind of sleepy while watching it. It was 100% my own fault, so I had to pause the movie and take a nap to recharge myself. But doing that did kind of made it lose its steam a bit, so I wasn't connecting to the movie as fully as I knew I could if I hadn't have gotten sleepy. But by the end, the action was just so great and I was just enjoying myself so much that I was like, no, it's fine. I can still put in the really liked. I know on a different day, I would have enjoyed this movie even more, but even with my sleepiness, I was still able to enjoy this movie a good solid amount. It is in the really liked category. So yeah, I do recommend this movie. Probably see the original first, and I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the original or if you're a fan of Westerns or Korean movies. It is just all over really solid. It's definitely worth a watch. And lastly is Tu Mama Tambien, or in English, and Your Mama Too. This is a 2001 Mexican movie. This is a very sexual movie. It's essentially a coming-of-age movie. The basic premise is these two 18-year-old kids are very, very horny and are very, very slutty. And they end up befriending this 30-year-old woman and they go on a road trip, essentially. And it's pretty solid. I do have to say though that the version I watched, the subtitles went way too fast to the point of it was hard for me to read everything. And a few times I did have to go back to make sure I caught what they said. That was really, really frustrating because I was enjoying this movie. I did find it very, very interesting. Though I kind of do think had I had better subtitles that I'd potentially hate the two main boys because I could tell just by their vibe that these are two kids, had I known them in high school, I would have hated them a lot because they're just And even though technically a decent amount of the plot is about these two teenagers trying to bang this older woman, it's kind of justified in ways that aren't in the movies I've complained about this such thing. Because like the boys are just, they're gonna bang anything. It's kind of their vibe. But then the woman is going through some big emotional crises. And that explains kind of why she's not really putting them down at all and maybe even encouraging it at times. So character-wise, it makes a lot of sense. Plus like age-wise, these guys are 18 and she's not like insanely older than them. I'm not saying I like really condone her actions, but I can understand her actions. So yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I didn't super connect to it mostly because of the subtitles, so it ended up going in the quite liked. I definitely enjoyed it. I would say if you're curious about it, it's worth a watch. You're not going to waste your time at all, and hopefully you can keep up with the subtitles. Yeah, it was a good solid movie. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got One Cut of the Dead sitting at number 1. It was a big debate about like how to organize the top 3 movies because like they're all so good and they're so good for different reasons. But like I just laughed so incredibly hard at One Cut of the Dead and connected to it very, very deeply. So I had to put it at number 1. Even though number 2 and number 3, The Sasquatch Gang and The Hustler, are both incredible films that I also definitely recommend. It's just One Cut of the Dead. It just struck an extra chord with me that those other 2 movies didn't quite get to, and it's great. I love it. And then after that is The Good, the Bad, the Weird, so number 4 in the really like section. And then bringing up the rear, not too terribly far behind, is Tu Mama Tambien, sitting at number 6 in the quite like section. And this is out of a total of 12 old movies so far this year.